Hello, everybody. This is the live inaugural version of the ServiceNow live coding happy hour. So we've got another colleague who might show up. Sent the invite a few minutes ago. Let me introduce myself. My name is Dave Slusher. I am a developer evangelist with ServiceNow. And my friend?
And this is Josh Nerius. I am also a developer evangelist at ServiceNow.
And so Josh and I work together, and this thing that we're doing right here is actually Josh's idea, where it's kind of a response to something we have done a few times recently, where we get we do a lot of webinars in our job function, where we're kind of demonstrating features or specific things or parts of the platform or what have you, or just the fact that you can develop an app. And so the develop an app in a very short time sort of presentation is one of the things that we do. And one of the things that we want to do is we kind of wanted to do almost the opposite presentation, which is not the polished thing, not not showing. Basically, we want to show warts and all. It's like, okay, let's suppose that we take the same thing, but now we just show what we do to get where we're going. So that's kind of what I want to show here. And so this is relatively informal. Actually, I won't say relatively. It's completely informal compared to all the other types of things that we do. So the idea here is it's pretty raw, and like there's no guarantee that we'll do the right thing. There's no guarantee we'll generate working code. We're just kind of. It seems like there's some value in just showing kind of what we do and how we go about it. So this is just me and a friend fumbling our way through the things we fumble through. All right. Anything else you want to add, Josh?
No, I think that pretty much sums it up. So might not be pretty, but we hope to have some fun.
All right. Before I turn my camera off and do my screen share, my part of the happy hour, I'm bringing a 21st Amendment hell or high watermelon. So that is what I have here. I don't believe I've ever had this.
You'll find out when you try to tap it in and untap.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got a Metropolitan Brewing Flywheel. It's brewed just a few miles north of me here in Chicago. It's got like a 97-point rating on Beer Advocate, so I don't think I've had this either, but we'll find out later.
I was thinking that this was a San Francisco brewery, but it says on the can, it says San Leandro. I know that, Chuck Tomasi and I, right before Knowledge 14, we went to the 21st Amendment that's near the Moscone Center, and I'm pretty sure Chuck had this one, and I'm pretty sure I didn't. So.
And I have to confess, so when I went and picked this up earlier, I went around to the liquor store in the corner, and they actually had Hell or High Watermelon there, so I picked up a 6-pack of that as well. So,
all right.
like, it's a perfect summer beer.
You have
Keep
that.
It black threes.
Yeah, you have that as a backup. So this seemed like a refreshing summer beer. So, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and screen share, and I'm gonna just kind of start talking about what I'm doing here. And so, in fact, the thing that I'm going to show here is we have been working on basically a GTD app, and so what we've got here, it's very just give you. Oh, am I not sharing yet? I think I didn't press the button yet. Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, so this GTD app, it's just kind of what you would expect. It's a data-driven version of GTD, where you define an action, and the action has a context, it has a state, someone owns it, it has a short description, etc., etc. You can see this is my local machine, so it's got a bunch of bogus test records in here, but it has your standard GTD priorities, etc., etc. It has a context you can put it in, and for this, sysadmin has personal and work set up, etc., etc. And we've got inbound email actions and all this kind of stuff. Now, what I have done is I have wrapped on top of that, I have put a service portal widget on that, which just exists here to kind of give it a front end. And I wanted to kind of make this, I just want to make this fun and give this something that you can. That would be usable, right? So when you come down to the whole rationale I have here is I wanted something that would serve two functions and be able to be usable in both functions. One of them is your review phase, where you want to basically look down your entire list and say, okay, here's all the things I have defined, as tasks. Do I have these in the right priorities? Is this really the thing that I want to be now? Is this really the thing I want to be next, et cetera, et cetera? And then the alternate thing is okay, I'm at work. So what's the thing I want to be working on now? And so I can just eliminate it down, and here's my list of things that so this thing right here, by definition, this should be the thing I'm working on, right? This is the most important thing to me. If it's not the thing I'm working on, then either my priorities are wrong or my activities are wrong. So, that's kind of just the background of this. So, and this is, I did a Helsinki webinar a couple weeks ago, and in that I did the ng material. I used ng material to give you this card view. And so, like, this is an ng material button, which gives you this little, like that little animation in and out. This is all ng material stuff. I wanted to. I took the Helsinki webinar thing, and I basically just put it onto this app. And I said, okay, what are other things I can do to that? And so in the Helsinki webinar, I basically had two columns, active and closed, and just to kind of show the dynamic nature of how Angular models worked, I wanted to have the ability to do this. So once I started putting this stuff in here, there were other things that other challenges I needed to figure out how to do. One of them is I wanted whatever's showing to use the full width of available real estate. And so, like right here, so you've got basically, like all Angular stuff on Service Portal, you've got your bootstrap 12-column deal, right? So when I'm showing one thing, that one thing gets all 12 columns. When I'm showing two things, it gets 6. When I'm showing 3, it gets 4, etc., etc.
And is that happening automatically, or did you have to do something to split that up?
Yeah, it's not automatic. What I had to do in here is, there's our colleague.
Hey.
Mr.
All right.
Cook.
So I'm going to show you kind of what's happening. We're kind of in media res. Let's go ahead and get a quick introduction on Chuck.
Hey, this is Chuck from ServiceNow, platform architect with the pre-sales team on the platform practice. I want you to buy more platform runtime licenses. No, go out and make more custom applications, and I'm there to help you. Let's have fun.
All right.
Cool.
And so we've actually got 3 time zones represented. So I'm the one that's most appropriate to be drinking beer. And Chuck is in the one that's least appropriate to be drinking beer at this time
I just got done with second breakfast.
All right. So Josh was just asking about in here in the service portal. So talking about the dynamic resizing of these columns. So let me show you where that happens. Let me show you both the HTML template and the client script. So there's a function over here called calculate column size. And what I'm doing with that is all I'm doing is looping over this priority model, and I'm looking to see, are they active or not active? And I'm counting the number of things that are active.
Yep.
And when I'm done, I take 12, divide that by it, do a floor, and that's the number of columns that I want to be showing for each of these guys.
Got it.
Where that comes into play is over here in this MD content. Where is that? My class is based on. Where do I do the calculate column size? Where do I do that? One of these classes, one of these content classes, data sortable options. There's this model, MD padding, ng class, column class. What do I column size? Oh, this is what I'm doing right here. I'm rewriting the class. So this right here. This is a reference to a scope variable that contains a string, and the string it's containing is this right here, column SM that calculated number.
Okay,
so
cool.
It's going to be 2, 3, 4, 6, or 12 because of this. So both 5 and 6 both get 2 columns because you can't have that fractional thing, right? So when you do the floor, so this is basically just rewriting into the scope a variable called column class that's named this thing, and so when you call calculate column size, which happens. I don't even remember where that happens now. Why does that happen? Calculate column size. I'm not actually. I have forgotten what triggers calculate column size. Oh no, it's the ng change on. So that's I've got an ng change on all of these checkboxes.
Oh, okay.
So if there is a state change of any of these checkboxes over here.
Yeah.
Then it'll call that column, it'll recalculate it, it'll reset the CSS class, and then it'll redraw based on that new CSS class.
Cool.
So, yeah, this is kind of. I will admit that the Angular stuff requires kind of thinking backwards of how I often think, right? Because you're kind of, in a lot of ways, you're thinking about what you're reacting to, and you're thinking about like how it's going to look when it's done, as opposed to declaring a bunch of stuff. So it's very callback driven, and it's kind of I guess this is functional programming, where it's all about what you're responding to. So one of the things, like when I talked to Chuck before, so this is in fact I think not what I walked through on Monday, is we talked about the option to be able to turn on and off contexts. And so I actually added that after we talked on Monday when I did our Tech Now walkthrough. And so I have that now where I can, let me go ahead and turn everybody on here so you can see all the data. So I've basically got, these are all the contexts that are defined for this user. So sysadmin has two contexts, personal work, and I actually hard code another one in there because I realized if you don't have a context, you never see it in here. So now you can turn on personal, you can turn on work, and you can turn on the things with no context, which right now I don't have any data in that, but you can also turn that on. And so you can show, the same way that you can show and hide the stuff, you can kind of make the data show and hide. And this is all just happening over here. I've got I've basically got an array of ng models set up on the contexts, and what each of these checkboxes has a true/false value, and then down here when you're showing any individual card, there's an indexed by the context of that, like the name of that context. If your context model is showing, then you see it, and if it isn't, you don't see it. So that kind of just shows and hides all this stuff. So now here's the kind of like where I'm going to start with the live coding. Is what I'm doing right now is the way I'm getting those contexts. I'm getting these contexts out of the database, and you can see here is the code. You have this available to you in your controller. Is you have this this HTTP object, which is one of the predefined ones. And to make that available, it's like sitting out here in this like amorphous pool of available objects to you. So scope is one, SBUtil is one, HTTP is one. By putting it in this function, you now make it available to everything that happens in here. So when I do that, I now basically have this HTTP client. And so I'm doing a get method right now on the table API. I'm just getting the context for this, the owner of this thing, the owner, the sysid of this current owner, which I'm building in the data object over here. One of the things I did just as a convenience to myself is when I build this data object on the server side, I just put the display name and the sysid of the current user in there. And then it's very easy for the server to get it. It's just right there. And then once I do that, that's actually in this data object. It's available to the scope, and it's even available down here. So data.currentUser is the name used down here, is available, and user sysid is available in either of these places because I stuck it in this data object. So what I'm going to do, step one, is let me show you. Open another tab. I got a little bit pre-baked, but not a lot. I have gone ahead and I've got inside our Do Now application, inside this scope, I now have two scripted REST APIs. I have a get contexts and I have a get priorities. And I should also do.
So you wrote these previously, right?
I have previously written these, yes.
Okay.
So get priorities is an easy one because in this case,
out of curiosity, why would you go with the scripted REST API instead of the table API?
Because it'll be a little more succinct, and I just kind of want. I mean, it's kind of an act-alike. I just did it because I kind of like it and I want to do it. It's not a huge. I mean, there's no like it's working now. There's if you had a thing that's working, you don't necessarily need to do it. Sure. But I just wanted. It seemed like a little cleaner way to do it. So let me go ahead and open my studio, which I don't have a reference to right now.
And while you're doing that, I was just going to say, conceivably, by wrapping that in a scripted REST API, you could add cool new things to it later. So that's always something to keep in mind. I think some of the time that that little bit of extra abstraction can be a good thing.
Yeah, you can do that, and now it's a thing that it lives in the scope, It's going to be part of the scoped app. It's going to be, if like you say,
True.
even though it kind of acts like it just sort of wraps up that little tiny bit of logic in there. So, like my get priorities over here. Let's just open them both up while I got them. So it's basically the same code, right? It's get priorities, and I'm just looping over the priorities. I'm basically looping over. One of the reasons maybe to do this is because, you're doing a little bit of stuff to the internals, right? Sys choice, and so if you just kind of wrap it up logically at the scripted REST API, you actually are not exposing internals down at the controller level. You kind of keep that in house up here at the
You
REST
may even
API
want to add one more query in there, Dave, and filter by English.
for active. Or
active, yeah. And then also get one language, because if you go multilingual, you're going to get like 5 of everything.
All right, and I have never done that. So what's the query?
Do an add query. And I believe it's language is the field name, and then the value is just tick E on. There you go.
All right, we'll do that. All right, so we've got
where I put
this
the disclaimer and say, warning, untested code ahead.
Yeah, well, this whole experiment is warning untested code. So let's
that
go
is
ahead
the point.
yeah. So I'm going to come down here and and this is static, right? You're just going to get the priorities.
Right.
So we should see our JSON object of the 6 priorities, and that's
what
we want to see.
Break it. If anything, we just have an ignored query statement.
All right. So step 1 here. I'm just going to come over here.
Real quick.
Yeah, I'm going to switch this guy from what we got to now. It should be an act-alike. This should in fact be very, very easy, because what I should do is if I cut and paste this code over to here, and just get rid of all the table API code.
I don't know if that add active query is going to work, because the filter is called inactive. Remember, that's the only one in the system that's backwards. You might want to tweak that.
This is what happens when you call it.
Right. But
so we know the query works, right?
If it's wrong, it's just ignoring it.
Yeah, it could be.
So if you were to deactivate some of those, they might not be filtered out of this list.
I'm going to make that a thing I worry about later.
Let someone in production find it.
All right, so now at this point, because the structure of this JSON is in fact, I think it's identical to what we were getting at before, because all I was really doing was pulling out the label and the value of what came out, and I believe label and value is there. So in fact, I think we'll try it out. I'm going to try this and see if we get these same priorities, or not priority. Oh, you know what I'm doing? I just did that for context. That was, in fact, let me back this up. All right.
For priorities?
Our first big, yeah. Let's back up everything I did. But that was for building the context. What I want to do is, in fact, do this for the priorities.
So tell me, because I feel like I walked in halfway, when would you use the HTTP request? What are you refreshing and when in that client script?
So this is me. Yeah, this is me from the controller. This is going to happen. This is basically going to be a one-time run at startup time
to figure out what those checkboxes actually are.
So what I'm doing here, what I'm going to do now is, instead of this, I'm replacing this with the call to the scripted REST API.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to build this guy this way.
Okay. You said you could also build that in the server code and pass it in the data model, correct?
I could do that, but I don't need to, because this is not going to change. This is not going to change over the course of the run of this, right? So if I'm building this over here, what's going to happen is, although that would work perfectly well, and I could do basically the same glide query that's happening in the scripted REST API, we would be pulling it back over every single time.
Oh, okay, because the server script gets called.
This gets called when you refresh the data. And then the other thing is, we're basically, we got 3 things here. We've got the display name, we've got the value of it, and we've got the model that will be associated with it. And this model is the checkbox, the state of the checkbox. So if we do any kind of definition at the server side, whatever state the checkboxes are is going to get lost when it comes back from the server. So every time your data, if you check something, it's going to refresh to default every single time you change your data, and that's going to be a weird user experience. So we're going to come down here to the priorities. So I'm going to change. So I'm doing basically the same thing I'm doing for context, except I'm going to change this to the priority scripted REST API. Oh, did I lose my paste buffer? So we're going to come down here. So this will be a little bit more of a test. And so we're going to do that. We're going to loop over that. In the success case, we're going to do exactly the same thing. I'm just going to call this priority. I still don't have it spelled right. Priority. And let me go back to my scripted REST API page, which over here, I've got label and value. That's how I'm presenting it. So I'm going to come over here, and I just want to get, so I got label and value, except because I want to make it match up here, name, value, and then model. And so what I'm going to do down here is just say, I'm going to say either true or false. Let's just default them to true for right now. At this point, we're going to push context. Here's what was confusing me. I've got it. Oh, whoa. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I'm in the wrong one here. So priority. Downside of when you cut and paste code, you got to make sure you're working on the right chunk of code.
Minor details.
Minor detail, yes. So then up here we've got scope data priorities, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment on all of
Comment
this.
them out. Don't get rid of them. Comment them out.
So that I'm just creating an empty array at this point.
Yep.
And when we come down here, I'm going to
crossed
priorities, push priority.
Mm-hmm. One's handy to have 6 eyes on it.
And now I'm actually going to don't need to do that. So at this point, and then I don't need this part because this is specific to building that empty context. So at this point, what it should do is, and make sure that I got my nesting right. Yeah, looks right. So at this point, what it should do is it should come down. It should hit my table API, load it, loop on it, and then when I'm done, I should have the same scope data priorities. I should have the same. This should be the same array of roughly the same objects when I'm done. That is the theory here. Mm-hmm. So I should see the same thing up there, although it's not going to have a default value. So we'll see if that works.
Drum roll, please.
And in fact, they are all so close.
Yeah.
Oh, very close. So let me show you what's happening here. I'm going to reload the page.
I missed the subtlety. You had no cards showing?
No. So I'll show you that all 6 of those things, because I defaulted them to true as I was building it.
Recognized
but all of them are not. Yeah, all of them are not being recognized at first.
Yep. So he knows what to do.
And why is that? So the data is true, but the model, priority model. So each one of these guys is getting the correct model over here, but the ngF on this thing, the ngF on the context, priority value, and the ngF over here, if priority dot model. So
gosh, you're looking pretty professional with the mic boom and everything. What's up with that?
Oh yeah. Working on the new setup. Not as fancy as yours, I'm sure.
You're just doing some podcasting videos.
Bit of podcasting, bit of videos, other things, and our live coding sessions, of course.
All right, so the interesting thing is when I load it, I get only the now column. So if I come over here and I load it, every single one of these guys defaults to on. We get everything, but only the now column shows. If I change anything, we get what we get is correct. So that actually, I am not 100% sure why. Something to do with the model. Josh, do me a favor. Can you look in the chat out of curiosity? I don't know if anybody has put anything in the chat.
So far, nothing, but actually that's a good point.
Yeah.
If anybody has comments or wants to chip in, go on the left side and hit the chat thing. We can actually live chat right here, and we will talk to you.
Yeah, the topmost, on the left side, the topmost icon. So if anybody else is in there, if you either have a question, feel free to type it in there. If you see what's happening or you know the answer, feel free to chime in, and we'll have that come up. So that is that. I do not know at this moment why. So clearly what's happening is when this guy is doing this model, the ng-if for priority model, is true in the first case and is false for everybody else. And why would that be? When we build this thing, I'm getting the name, the value, and I'm just forcing everybody to true. I'm pushing them in here. So why at build time would that not be the case? So one of the things, I think I brought this up when we did Tech Now on Wednesday, is that one of the kind of conceptual hurdles that I had to cross over, particularly at this view end, like the HTML template in the Angular, is the fact that all these things that you're doing in here, and I guess this is probably actually even a mistake here, I should probably change this to like that, is that like when you're defining all these ng directives, you are, although it's text here, this will be interpreted as a variable. This ng model is the variable that is this priority, the model field of this priority, right? So even though these are strings, these all get interpreted. And I actually, so you see down in here like this templating stuff, I actually have gotten gotten myself confused where I'm trying to stick these templates up here in these things. And that's actually exactly the wrong thing to do, because you don't have to do that. This string will go backward. It's no different than like doing an exec on this, basically, or whatever the JavaScript equivalent, where you take something in a string and you're interpreting the string as code. So that's why all the stuff in here are strings and doing that. So let me get back to the problem at hand. I may or may not spend a lot of time on this. We may table this and come back to this, because this is not the hugest issue in the world, although I don't like it. Is why is the model not? Why is this? Oh, I think I may know why. I think it comes down to this ng change, because I think I need to default this thing. Is that calculate column size that we were talking about before. I think this does not happen until the very first time. So everybody's showing, but it's defaulting to a column class of 12.
That makes sense.
So let me see if I can come over here, calculate column size. Calculate column size. Why don't I just do calculate? Oh, so column class. Here's what I'm going to do. Do this brute force, and we'll see if this will address this hypothesis. I'm going to go ahead and just define it once up front.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Call it column 12.
It's going to come back.
Get this, right, or column 2. We'll start there. And then it'll respond on the change. Boom. Okay, that was it. So, cool. Not that the other things weren't there, it's that they probably. Actually, you know what? Let's even test this hypothesis. I'm going to get rid of that for a second. So, and save this. And so the way that it comes up here and we see only that, I'm going to come over here in the full service portal page, this thing. And I'll bet if I reload it over here, and then I scroll down, we're going to see one column. If I scroll down, we're going to see all the other columns. There they are. So
Sure.
they're all showing, it's just they're all 12 columns wide. And so they lay out this way. So that was exactly what was happening. All right, so if I had been looking in the main portal, I probably would have seen it sooner. So seems to me, in this particular case, like initializing it here makes some sense to me. So I'm going to leave it like that. So there you go. There's running across a problem. exactly the kind of stuff that I wanted to fiddle with in here. So
And-
the other... Oh, go ahead, Josh.
I was just going to say, and for anyone watching or listening, if you happen to know, I know that Angular has some interesting things around initialization with directives. So I think there's some things that you can do when you're declaring your view code. But I don't know enough about Angular, so I'm making a note. I'm going to come back to this one because this is certainly declaring it, initializing it that way seems like a good way to start. But there might be another way too.
Yeah, and that's disclaiming. I think I've disclaimed this everywhere that I talk about this. Is I am not an Angular expert. In fact, kind of the opposite. I'm kind of trying to show like how much you can do without knowing very much about what you're doing, which is kind of the Angular story and kind of the service portal story. Is you don't have to know a whole lot about it. It takes not a lot to get you going. So the other thing I'm going to do. Is now that we've done that, so the primaries are building from the database, which is good. So the hardcore, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this now. I'm going to move it actually closer so that it's not declared far from where it's used.
Best practice applied. Avoid hard coding values.
Yep. All right.
Josh remembers his best practices.
All right, so we'll do that. And so now we're going to do the same thing to the context model. And this I'm going to actually, just for fun, I'm just going to literally cut and paste it and then test it with that. Because I think that's all it's going to take is if I come over here. So the context, the other thing is, let me get this, I got to get this guy's, I'm going to lose my REST API. I just want to get his sysid. Because I need that to do that. All right, so I'm going to get context for the sysadmin sysid, pass that in, and we get his context. And actually, I need to edit something in this REST API. Well, let's go ahead and do this. I think we're going to need something more, or we may want something more here. We go ahead and pop open the Studio. And for get context, what we're not doing in here is putting in the sysid. Go ahead and do it like this.
Oh yeah, that would definitely be important.
So
within the app today, can multiple people create contexts with the same names?
Yes.
Yes.
Got it.
And probably you will, because probably almost everyone's going to have a work context or something like that. It's if you look over here at the context table, it's really just a couple things. And I got this weird view. Something reset on my thing. Where I get this odd table view. And if I come over here, isn't this really crazy? I get nothing in it.
And I found out check the list layouts in your, see where it says dictionary entry in the application file picker in Studio. Somehow mine got in that way too, where it says dictionary under list layouts.
Oh, you're saying over here?
List layouts. You went past it.
Oh, list layouts.
There's one for dictionary entry.
Super weird.
Yeah, it's somehow snuck in from global. I noticed it did that on my app. I was setting up a demo, and I went, let's create a table. All of a sudden, my list layout's whacked. Went, well, that's not a good demo. Have to fix that.
Oh, Can I just get rid of it?
Yes, delete it.
Do I have the delete option?
You'll have to go to the application files in the application menu. I know this is off topic.
Yeah, I'm gonna just get rid of that because I don't.
That.
Well, I'm not going to mess with that now because I don't.
Okay. I deleted it. It was fine.
Okay.
If you go under Application menu, Applications, open up your application, down on the related list of application files, find it, delete it, done.
So this is really, I just want to show kind of what's in there. You got the owner, the value, private, a Boolean, like is it private or not private, and you got a label. And that's really the important stuff in sysid. So over here, I've just expanded this one more thing to add the sysid to that. And so at that point, make sure that I didn't put an error that gives me a 500.
REST API Explorer.
All right, so yeah. So at this point, if I switch this out, it should be a drop-in replacement.
And if it works, the first try, it deserves a drink.
Absolutely.
It's still too early for me. It's not 12:30 here.
On a Friday.
You all switch your clocks back in the fall.
I was thinking you were in Mountain. You're in Pacific?
I am on Mountain Standard Time, which never changes in Arizona.
Oh, I see.
You guys
so
all switch around me.
I see.
There's
So you're
no
on Mountain
daylight
time, but not daylight. That's
Correct.
why. So you're on the same as Pacific.
Pacific Daylight Time
in the
is
summer.
Mountain Standard Time.
Right. Okay, gotcha.
And then everybody, Utah and Colorado, whoever switches to Mountain Standard Time in the winter.
All right. So we're going to
At first I thought, this is great, I never have to change my clocks, but then I have to remember where you all are, which is even worse. Now let's see, is Dave 2 hours ahead of me or 3 hours ahead of me?
All right. So I'm going to do nothing but switch that, and what we should do is see no real change on this. So I'm going to do that. We should still get the same stuff. Personal work. Oop, no, we didn't. All right. So let us
Take a drink
figure
of
out.
water.
No beer for us.
And
If it fails, take a drink of water. If it works, take a drink of beer.
Show me.
How many viewers we got, Josh?
We are at 7 live viewers.
Here's why. Because go back to the thing. Oh, I can't. I saved it. I can't do it.
Did we socialize this in any way?
That
A little bit.
Interesting. A little bit of Twitter, a little bit of...
Kind of a soft launch because
Okay.
we're not 100% sure how it's going to go.
Keeping it small.
Could be a one-hit wonder.
ID. Not that. What's my? Let me pop this open.
Hey, that's how Tech Now got started. Like,
Current user
see
ID.
how it goes.
Current. What I did, and I saw that down here, is I got a 400 because I didn't pass it the right parameter. I wasn't passing it sysid. I was just giving it get context without the parameter.
And so just kind of a practical thing, it probably makes sense to keep that that console log open when you're doing this stuff too.
Yeah, and there you go. It actually did work, and it's working just like the other thing. So essentially, it's building the same thing, but now it's building it from the scripted REST API instead of the table API. And like I said, if that was your only real thing, I might not have. It's more or less I act alike at this point. Since I'm building the one thing from a scripted REST API, it kind of made sense to me to just put them both in there.
Yeah. Well, and because you're doing choices on the other one, it makes you don't have to worry about thinking about the choice list table, and this keeps it all in one place. So
yeah,
a lot more extensible.
Yeah. So that's at this point. Now I've got all that kind of stuff happening.
Now, if you wanted to abstract it one level further, you could put a script include inside of your scripted REST API, or a call to a script include. So that way your script include function would remain the same functionality throughout the system, whether you're calling it from a business rule or your scripted REST API or however you're getting it, you'll still get that same list of contexts or priorities or whatever. And if we suddenly say, well, you know what, we're not going to use this as choice list for priorities anymore, we're going to make our own priority list, that's fine too. We can just tweak it in the script include and nothing else needs changing.
Yeah. So the only, I'll show over here. This actually, so you'll notice I've got a certain amount of, you'll see kind of, and I can probably get rid of these at this point because I don't really need this anymore. But you can see that as I was developing this, I was doing a lot of console logging, and you can kind of still see.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's a good idea.
Still see that stuff existing in there. And you'll see over here, now let's come over here and do some drag and drop stuff. So the whole kind of fun part and the rationale of this thing that I originally wanted to do. This is what the part of expanding the Helsinki webinar was adding drag and drop. And I actually gave myself a weird wild goose chase where I went looking for a drag library to add, not realizing there's a great built-in one called ng-sortable. So I didn't realize that ng-sortable included drag and drop. So just from the name kind of undersells what was available in there. Sure, you can sort it, but you can sort it via drag and drop. And so what you see over here, to open up my client script again, is I come over here and I define sort options. And I define that in the scope. I define sort options, and two of the options so I can give this basically values, and I'm defining for the ng-sortable library things about it. And two of the things that what I'm defining here is two of the callbacks, and these are kind of hard-coded. When you do a move, and a move is from one container to another container. That is an item moved. It'll call this callback. When you reorder within the same column, which I don't have enough height to show it there, but let me show you.
Can you make your font smaller? There you go.
Well, no, I just don't have enough. The widget in the editor doesn't scroll.
Yeah.
So anything that goes under it, you can't. So you get kind of just a picture of the top. So this right here, this is a order changed event. So here to here, item moved. Whoop, and I gotta do that. This, when I pull this developer community up, that is a order changed. So what I did in what's actually happening under the hood is we've got a call to a put that anytime I want to save information back, I'm passing it the sys of the record I want to save, of the action that I want to save, and just the JSON data that I want changed. And so I actually factored this. At one point, I had multiple of these things. I had a write priority, I had a write execution order, and then I decided I didn't like and all of which were almost identical, other than the fact that they just had different. You would pass sys and priority, or sys and order. I'm like, this is almost the identical code. Let me factor this out. So now you can see that when I change the order, like if I want to reorder things, I'm actually looping through, and I'm calling this thing with the sys of something, and then I'm passing it the JSON execution order equals value. Mm-hmm. And that's what saves it. And I did the same thing over here. When I move something, you see what I do is I get the priority. The priority is basically defined at the header level in here. Like this guy has a reference to the priority up here. So given that I know I have a reference to the container in the event, so I got the event sortable scope and the event destination sortable scope. And by figuring this out, this is probably suboptimal. This is something that there's probably a much better way to do this. This is a way that works. I think it's probably very far from the best way. So, like working with this Angular stuff, it's very much the hierarchy of need, right? At the very first time that you do it, it's like, how to make any damn thing happen.
Brute force.
How do I make this? How do I make the event handler happen at all? Because I don't know how to do that. And then so you get that, and now I have kind of factored this code a couple times where I figured that I realized that I'm doing kind of suboptimal stuff inside here, and there's a reason actually. When I originally did this code, and if you look at that Helsinki webinar that I did, the original thing that I did, I had one giant list of data that I built on the server side. And there was all of the data was in a single array, and then when you came down here to display it, when I iterated over the cards in this thing, I did a filter. So I did action in CData filter value, like priority equals value, like priority equals a thing. So what would and that was the original implementation of this, is that I had 6 columns, but I had one data model. And then once I started working with this, I realized that was actually problematic, because when I come over here, the event that I get from the drag and drop in here, event source sortable scope and event destination sortable scope, the model in here, you'll see down here there is, and I had to find this stuff the hard way. I'm going to write a blog post about like what's in the sortable scope, because when you look at the ng-sortable documentation, it tells you there is a thing called sortable scope with no indication of what's contained in it. And the thing that you really need when you're doing any of this stuff is this model right here is this. So this list of 2 items, that is the model. Like if I drag this in here, at the point that that event has happened and this callback happens over here, this destination model, sortable scope model is model value. I'm sorry, is this list of 3 things. So this array of 3 items is this thing. So it's really, really important that you know that that's what model value is. And so that's why I factored this thing from one giant list of all the data in it, filtered over here at the ng repeat. You can certainly do that. But then what I wanted to do is I wanted to compose it so that the model that's in my event handler is meaningful. And so now instead of this being one giant thing, it's basically an array of all the data exists in an array of 6 different chunks of data, right? So it's indexed by priority, if that makes sense, right? So now instead of the actions being originally the actions was one big priority, now the action is a JSON object. It's a hash map that is indexed by priority, and each priority has a model, which corresponds to this, right? So priority now has its model, next has a model, etc., etc., etc. And I factored that precisely to make these event handlers over here more sensible, right? Because they were at the point where I'm dealing with this. Here's what made me refactor that data model. As I came over here and I said, okay, when the item has moved or the order has changed, I want to be able to loop through this, and I just want to be able to save. I'm going to save this back with an execution order 100, 200, 300. And the action, the act of doing that when they were in one model was insane. It was ridiculous, like the stuff that I found myself doing. So, to the point where to get these things in that order, I had to basically loop through the DOM as rendered by Angular, right? Because my data model was not meaningful. My data model was all the data. Both of these destination and source data is the entire array of everything. So so then I'm like trying to find element whatever dot whatever dot whatever, and I started like trying to deconstruct the DOM, and I said, if this is this hard,
no, if you got to go to the DOM, you're doing it wrong.
It's got to be the wrong thing. I like so it doesn't make sense. So I scrapped all that, and note that this is in fact the way I'm getting those priorities is in fact a hangover of that sort of thinking, which is why there's probably a better way to do it, and that will be one of my future tasks, is getting this out of here, right? Because I probably don't want to be pulling the element. Element 0 is basically the outermost container here. It's this container here. And I probably don't want to be doing that. And if I look over here, you see that I just defined the priority value here. And like I say, it works to stash it in there. I tried actually just putting an arbitrary property in here, and I think that doesn't work because I just stuck in, I think, priority equals this, and when I did, it didn't work out of the box, and so I went back to this. I think because MD content doesn't have, it's not going to take arbitrary properties. I think. I don't know that for a fact. So anyway, let me show.
So I'm gonna just pause here for a second. So it turns out that it looks like our viewers can't see the same group chat that we actually see inside of Google Hangouts. So a couple of things that came through on the actual Google Plus page. Well, one was to lock to your screen, since anytime Chuck and I make a noise or touch our keyboards, it's flashing our faces up there.
Okay. And what do I do, Chuck? What do I do to lock to that?
Are you running the now?
Yeah, I'm running both of them. Yes.
Just go down to the avatars on the bottom and click the screen you want to lock on, which will be you, Dave.
Okay, so I clicked it.
Yep. Say something, Josh.
So are we locked on it even when Josh is talking?
Nope. It should have the white border around it.
Okay, now it should be locked on me.
Test 1, 2, 3.
No, you have to do it as the presenter, not as your screen.
This is the presenter screen.
Okay. Okay.
So I see that I've got to hide from broadcast. I got to present to everyone. How about that? Now try it.
All right, here we go.
There you go.
Okay.
Cool.
It's not a
Got it.
developer
Okay.
program. There's a little pop-up I missed.
Also, another very important question that came through was somebody going to be providing beverages? And the answer is yes. All of you.
It's
providing-
BYO.
It is BYO beverage.
Amazon same-day delivery. That's
Prime News.
BYOB. Bring your own beer.
all right. Let me. I'm gonna have to Google on this JavaScript. JavaScript console code search. There's a code search. I swear to God, I've looked this thing up so many times. Like what the keystroke combination is to search on code.
Yeah, those keystroke combinations get a little funky in Chrome, it seems like. They're never super easy to remember.
Chrome. Chrome keyboard. What in the hell? Control Shift. All right, so I think Control Shift F, is that the one? So what I want to do is I want to be able to search on code because I found that there's no real good, reliable way to get the debugger attached to this thing other than searching on this code right here. So let me see. If anybody knows that keystroke combination, please tell me. Control
For which?
code for doing a code search from Chrome.
Code
So
search.
down here in the console, you have a thing where you can do a code search. Because what I want to do is I want to look for this item moved function. And it's not this because I think this is searching on the thing. What I wanted to be doing is searching on the code. Is this it? Okay, great. This is the thing I want. So I have to search down in that thing. So at this point, I'm looking. All right. So now this is. Click it twice. All right. So this is how I figured out what was in that ng-sortable event. So I had to come over. I had to do something like this. So, and the problem being, and here's why I had to search it, is I think I might actually be looking at, you'll notice that this VM whatever, where you get this controller code, it changes every single time. And
It's almost like it's an instance of this particular...
Right. Let me actually try it. So rather than doing it in here, I'm actually going to try it in the, refresh this, I'm going to try it in the main service portal. Because like when you're in the widget editor, you're actually, this whole thing is kind of wrapped up in some other stuff. So why don't I try to remove some layers of abstraction? So Josh, just out of curiosity, how did you get to the chat that everybody is actually seeing?
So I am looking actually at the Google Plus posting. So it's really just the comments section, not really chat. So
Where am I finding that posting?
I will send you a copy of that, Chuck.
Okay.
Let's see here.
I don't. Since I'm not following probably the right account, I'm not going to see it.
Yeah, weird, because I see an empty chat over in my thing, but that's not. But you're saying they basically come in as.
Yeah, I'm starting to think that it's maybe only for people that are in the Hangout directly.
All right.
So that's probably what's
Okay,
going
now I see it. So Steve, Andrew Barnes. Okay, gotcha. All right. Your typical group of retrobates. All right.
Exactly.
I don't actually know which of these two.
They're Friday delinquents.
I'm very happy, by the way, that they're not seeing Chuck and my big faces anymore.
Okay.
They get enough of that.
All right. So
get that off of there.
what I actually did right here is I went and I set a breakpoint on both of these things because I don't know. You notice that there's two references to this. And I actually don't know which one of these is the live one. And there's something there's something slightly different. You notice actually maybe one might be the previous version because there's commented out in one and not commented out in the other. And what's this current state of it? The current state of it is not commented out. So apparently there's like some sort of weird thing where there's two copies of it in here. At this point I should, there we are. So we are, this is the way that I figured out all this stuff about the event. and let me kind of try to expand this. It was not at all pretty. Not at all pretty. It was not really that scientific. So at this point, I've got this. It's kind of brute force, which is why I want to write a blog post and post it to the community, and it'll be actually it'll have the nice side effect of being not just a ServiceNow thing. Like anybody that uses ng-sortable in Angular, whether Service Portal, not Service Portal, you actually could use the same information. So you come down here, and this is the event. And so just for fun, let's show you like what ng-sortable tells you. So if you go to the ng-sortable docs, it describes that event, and this is what it tells you right here. Your event is source dest index item scope sortable scope index sortable scope. Great. And now what? Okay. What in the hell does sortable scope mean?
It should just say object.
Right. So that's the whole thing. It's like, all right, now I've got sortable scope. What does that mean? So I have dropped this on whatever I have dropped it on. I have dropped it from one of those columns, which under the hood is an MD container. So now at this point, oh, you know what? Never mind. The JavaScript console is frozen for everybody. So under the hood we got an MD container. I've moved from one to the other. So let's look at the source. And you notice that we've got the sortable scope. Okay, great. It's of type scope, and this is kind of how I actually learned a lot about Angular just from attaching to the debugger and looking at this. So there's stuff that you kind of know. So index 1, I dropped it like where I dropped it. It is now index 1, like after the drop. And so model value is that thing. So the thing that contains the stuff that I care about. And this is, by the way, this is all effective post-drop. So model value contains this, and if we look at these objects, you'll see my object, right? This is the JSON object I defined in that model. So when I defined it over on the server side, this is that thing. And so there's object 1, there's object 2, and this is, again, I said post-drop. So when I drop it and I let my key up, the effective state, so what you're seeing on the screen at that point, that's actually what is in the model. So that is actually pretty beautiful for my needs. When I want to loop over it and save everything back to the database, I was assuming before I looked at this, I was going to have to do some math and do some array splicing, right? Because what I thought I was going to get was this model before the drag happened. I thought it was going to tell me the pre-drag model, the index, and then it was up to me to kind of figure everything out. And in fact, it was much nicer than that. It's the post-drag model, and now I can just, if you look at my code, which I may not be able to scroll to, no, because I'm frozen in the thing. Let me go ahead and just release this. If you look at the code, when I reorder it, quite literally, all I'm doing, like if I'm not changing it from column to column, I literally do nothing other than just pass it a reference to the whole model and let it reorder it.
Got it.
So the order changed is extremely simple. You notice that most of this right here, all that logic right there is just to deal with moving from one column to the other. Figure out your old priority, figure out your new priority, figure out the sysid of the thing, save it back. That's what the highlighted stuff is. For saving the execution order, I call it once on the source and once on the destination, and it goes through and it rewrites them based on what you're actually looking at in the in your list. So if I put it in here, at that point, and so I'm again stopped. At that point, it won't want that what came in, and it's calling it 100, 200, 300, and if you look at the data, you'll see that change. Let me just go ahead and put everybody in the same one, so that you're in a few sets, so I'm going to drag this into this thing. I'm going to drag him at the top, and if we come back over here and look at the event again, and one thing to remember is I'm actually still looking at that old event when I do that. So I'm down here in the console type event, and then I have this inspector, and I'm looking at the destination, and you'll see that in the destination, my sortable scope now has a model value, and it should have 4 things, right? And the context showing test, I think, should be the topmost one. Oop. model value, or drag test, whichever one that was. Drag test. I have confused myself. Am I looking at the right thing? I don't know. But so this is kind of how I figured out where to get this information, because as you can see from the docs, this doesn't tell you that much. Let me see if it even mentions model value in its own documentation.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about.
Does not.
That's one of the challenge. Yeah. So what I'm wondering is, so I know that there are some Angular sort of helper extensions, things like that out there. So ng-inspector.org, for example. I wonder if that would kind of extend to other Angular libraries as well.
Yeah. Well, let me unfreeze this. Let me show you. I installed one of them. I don't know which one did I install. This is.
That looks like the ng-inspector icon.
Okay. Well, so let me hide the console. Click this guy. And so this does show you some stuff, and I was kind of playing with this earlier.
What is that, and how did you get there?
I installed the Chrome extension.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Which is, yeah, that is ng-inspector.
Nice.
So at this point, I'm looking at, and I found, again, the same thing, like when you did this inspector against the widget editor, like this widget view here is Angular wrapping up a bunch of other Angular. So it actually looks a little crazy when you come over here. So this is my, this is my in situ widget.
Yeah, that's what Fred Letty refers to as the self-eating watermelon.
Yeah.
The whole widget editor is Angular built on the widget editor. Like, what?
So 52 is, so it's very much like when you do the DOM inspector type thing when you're looking at a page. So where is my hard part? So I actually find it a little bit, so you notice that I'm like basically going over the checkboxes. These are all the items that are, okay, so here at this point, I notice it is not doing the entirety of my, so I would think that the thing that contains this would do my whole bottom part, but it's not actually highlighting it that way.
Interesting.
So you see that this is now, that's the ng repeat. It does do some neat things. So this is clearly this, so it kind of shows you the thing that built that object. Now if I come down here, it should have some kind of reference, and there it is, model value.
Okay.
And so same deal, there's the model value. And this model value, I think, has got to be it's got to be an ng-sortable data construct. I think that's where this comes from. I'm not sure that this will tell me that. I'm not sure if it's I'm not sure how I can tell like who injected this. I think AS-sortable injected this into my MD container when I made it over here, when I made it in AS-sortable. I didn't actually show that earlier. Let me just show, like the whole way I made this drag and droppable is by declaring this, which is the container that those cards live in. I declare it as a class sortable container. I declare it before when I showed you like where I defined the sort options. I'm saying data as sortable has these sort options, and then I define the model. So just a couple of minor directives make that drag and droppable. And then down here in the card, I define it as a sortable item. So I've defined this upper thing, which is the column, is a sortable container. Then each card is a sortable item.
Got it.
I'm not 100% sure. I believe this is for CSS. I believe this enables the CSS of like what you're seeing, and I believe this enables the data model. I'm not 100% certain on that again.
Yeah, that looks like another directive that's probably somehow modifying.
Somehow or another, this probably goes back to this. So I think something about like when I make that sortable, somehow I'm hooking these guys in.
Got it.
I don't know. I don't have a deep understanding. I have enough understanding to copy and paste this in and make it work. I don't have a deep understanding of like what's happening under the hood there. Yeah. So at this point, I don't know if there's anything. We've actually been at this an hour. I don't know if there's anything else I want to fiddle with on this. Is there anything you guys would like to see, or anything more you want to like play with or know about this? We kind of did some of the stuff I wanted to do, which was I wanted to switch it over from that static definition to building everything at basically init time. which that happens now.
Mm-hmm.
So so now my data object add init time. We build the priorities. We build the contexts. And I'm probably I could probably factor this out. You know here how I have two different things. I have this context models and I have this context. I think when I first set this up, I didn't realize I could do this in one thing. And I think I actually don't even need this context models anymore. If I were to just come over here and make models one more field off of context, I think I'm probably get rid of that. And I might actually try to clean up that data model. I think I didn't realize I had that available to me. Like one of the parts of my journey here was figuring out that the model that controls this is really just a reference to a variable somewhere. And so if that variable is defined on this priority here, and being this priority, it comes down from the data array, right? So this is part of the model. And somewhere on that model, I can just say this priority, it has it gets a little confusing there. But I say this priority has a model for the checkbox, which is whether it's true or false. And by pointing it to this, everything that looks at that particular object's true-false value will then act on it. So whether or not it's displayed is part of that true-false, right?
Got it. So something else that'd be interesting to look at. So right now you've got those gets happening, those HTTP calls happening directly in your code. I know ServiceNow, we have the ability to create providers, and I think we support 3 providers right now. I think you can create services, factories, and what's the third one? Let me just pull this up here. But I'm wondering, that would be kind of another interesting exercise to abstract away the actual HTTP calls into services, so that you could then potentially call that in other widgets at some point as well to get your contexts and priorities.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't know anything about building those things at this point. So
maybe that'll be round 2.
There could very well be
live coding happy hour.
All right. So anything else you guys want to do? I mean, I just refreshed the Google Plus page, and I didn't see anything else new. I think Tim Denniston was the last one. I haven't seen anything past locking on that. So I don't know if anybody has any other technical questions. Do a going once, going twice type deal. But this is very much, I don't know how you guys thought it went. It's very much kind of what I had in mind. Is I really just kind of showing what I did, because
well, not just showing what you did, but you also added some functionality, which was
but kind of like showing how I thought about it, really.
Yep.
Because that's kind of where I really got down to. This part, the not knowing what was in these drag events, really did hold me up for a long time. And I want to say it was last Sunday morning. My daughter woke up. She crawled in bed, got her tablet, and she was playing some game. She's playing Threes or some Temple Run Oz game, and I'm sitting there with my laptop trying to figure out where this model business happened. So I was like, what am I supposed to be doing? We spent about 2 hours, her playing games and me like walking through, and then it was a giant yak shave, because I had to figure out, how do I even attach to the debugger? How do I even get a reference to this? What am I, and then once I kind of found out the right place to come in and started attaching to the debugger, and then I found the way to inspect it, and things got much easier at that point. But there was a bleak period where I thought, I don't know what's happening. I can't tell. I can't tell anything that's going on. I don't know where the data is. I don't know if I have access to the data. I just don't know anything about it. And so, like we were talking before, Josh, you were mentioning as a best practice when you're fiddling with this stuff, keeping the console open. Let me go ahead and show kind of what's happening down here. That actually, it is really, you get some good information, particularly like around my put request. And I'm not 100%. Again, I'm not 100% sure who's logging this, but like every time I do one of those, let me come over here. Let me do it from this guy instead of that. So I'm going to shrink ng-sortable, and I'm going to pop open the console. So all I just want to do is look at the output of the console here. I'll shrink it down a little bit. So note that. So I'm just going to reorder from this column. So there should be a lot of puts on here. And I'm going to try to drag it to the top, and this takes a little bit of. All right. So at that point, you see there's a loop through, and it did 4 puts, right? It called each one of these guys, and was saving through the put for each of those. Now note, even though it's going to call that, and it's going to loop over those 4, I'm going to do it where the data doesn't change. So I'm just going to do these 2. And can I do something in here just so that we can, just so we can have a differentiator. So it's going to loop through. It's going to call that put on all 4 of those things. Note that only 2 of those puts happen. Somewhere in there, and I don't know if it's the service portal or somebody knows that the data hasn't changed in 2 of those 4 objects. So note, I don't know who has that intelligence. That would be an interesting thing to find out. Is it our layer? Is it that HTTP client that figures that out, or why? Even though somebody was calling the put on this, somebody was smart enough to know it was an identical unchanged object, and therefore I'm not going to do it.
Right. Yeah, maybe something in the Angular internals, or who knows what. Yeah, that's an interesting question.
Yeah, I don't know who that is. It would be interesting to know if somebody knows. Kind of, if you're watching this later and you know, leave a YouTube comment, and just tell us what's happening there. But so it is actually good, right? You're not doing any more puts than you have to do.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And it happens automatically. I didn't make that happen. That happens, by itself. And, same thing over here. If I move this guy, and I'm still. Might be about time, So, and you notice too, if I do that, so let me actually drag. You'll note again, I drag the topmost one here. You'll note there should be puts. There'll be a put for here. Oh, I drag him into that white space. There's a put for that first guy, and let me do it again a couple times so that we get rid of that. Get rid of these breakpoints. I'm going to put another thing. I'm going to drag this over, and we'll see that there's a put for rewriting the priority and execution order of that first guy. And you notice then there's a put, for every one that it came out of, right? Because I'm calling it for both the source and the destination, because it's rewriting the execution order of all these guys.
Got it. Yeah.
So there was 4 from that. Now, if I drag this guy again, if I drag him up, there's only going to be 2 subsequent ones. So that's really interesting stuff. And I'm kind of learning bits and pieces. I'm almost learning kind of on a need-to-know type basis. It's like, all right, I don't know why this is happening, and I'll worry about it when I need to know.
It reminds me very much of when I first learned Ruby on Rails, where a lot of this stuff was magic, and then as you would start to try to figure it out, you would dig deeper, and then you're like, oh, well, that's just Ruby, or that's just, who knows where that is. But
that's kind of what it is with most languages.
Yeah. Well, and frameworks in particular, because most languages are going to be, there's not a lot of magic there, but there's definitely a lot of magic here. And I mean, none of it's truly magic, but yeah, cool. We did have another comment come in on the page from Steven. He said he liked it. He said if he had to ask for one thing, it would be to maybe develop an app from start to finish. Made it a little hard to kind of jump in while there was already code there. So that's good feedback.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. Part of what we want to do here is really just kind of show people working on the real life problems, right? So the deal with that is I wanted to show something like working on real stuff that was kind of important to me, that wasn't a dummy app, that wasn't, the downside of a lot of those kind of canned presentation-y things is that, by necessity, you've got to work on a small scale thing that's kind of trivial, right? Otherwise, you can't show it in 20 minutes or 25 minutes. So you got kind of a tension there. I certainly understand where you're coming from. I kind of wanted to do the opposite here and show something that's, I specifically wanted to show it because it is in the middle. It is the thing. Whether or not we were doing this live coding happy hour, I would be working on this same code, right? So to just kind of show the sausage being made was our real. It's like, okay, this isn't, it doesn't have to be pretty, but this is the stuff we do, right? I sit down and I do this for at this point, I have spent an ill-advisedly long amount of time on this particular app with this particular stuff, right? I did what I needed to for the demo, and then I've done a lot more. So, but at this point, particularly because the Angular part of it and the service portal part of it it just takes some soak time, right? The concepts have to come, they have to soak through. And so once I got to the point where it felt like the concepts were really coming through, I wanted to just kind of keep going. I didn't want to stop when it felt like I was really making headway into kind of figuring out what was happening. So at that point, I just kept going. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and something else too. So you mentioned maybe a poll. What we could potentially do, because I think if people are interested enough, it'd be fun to do these a few more times, or keep it going as long as people will keep watching. But we've got plenty of stuff to build. So I've got apps in my backlog and things like that for the developer program and all of that. So we can certainly explore different angles of the development process if we do more of these in the future.
Yeah. The other problem with starting from the scratch is that that first hour is not the most interesting hour. You know what I mean? There's a lot of boringness and a lot of boilerplate happening at the very beginning.
And I included a link to our Tech Now episode 28 where we do a lot of that boringness and whatnot. So that's a good boilerplate video.
Yeah.
If anybody wants it. I threw that in the comments as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you could do, if you really wanted to, and I actually wouldn't be opposed to this, is so what's the site, Joe? Is it livecoding.tv?
Yeah,
it's basically the
TV.
it's the Twitch TV for live coding. That like if you were gonna just you were gonna do nothing but sit down and code on an app for 8 hours, I don't have a huge problem doing it live and broadcasting the whole thing, right? Which would be a little bit different here because I kind of wanted to have the interaction and us talking to each other about it, and that was all part of the appeal. So yeah, we're kind of finding our way. This is, like we said, this is a low production value experiment where we wanted to, rather than overthink it, we were kind of, if anything, wanted to underthink it. So let's just take it and go. we'll tune we'll tune it up as we play, kind of deal. All right, gentlemen, anything else you want to do before we can wrap it for the day?
No, I just have to give a quick review to the flywheel from Metropolitan Brewing here in Chicago.
All right.
No, it's actually really, really good. Beer Advocate is not lying. So anyway, just throw that out.
I have been enjoying the Hell or High Watermelon, which I believe, Chuck, didn't you have this right before Knowledge 14?
21st Street Amendment? Or
yes.
21st Amendment in 21st San Francisco. Amendment. Yes. We have a good memory. Yep, I had that a couple times.
I specifically remember that because I think I wasn't drinking beer that night because I was getting over a stomach bug. I really wanted it, and I didn't get it. And
the first time we went to the 21st Amendment in 2007, they were just run out, so we were really bummed. So when you and I went in 2014, then I made a point of it. It's like, you've got it, I got to have it now.
All right. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, gentlemen, and we will.
You're welcome.
Do this some other time.
You bet. Thanks.
All right. See you guys.
The broadcast stops now.